Happy Monday, everybody. It was an interesting weekend for all of us. Guys, TJ, your team did well, did what they were supposed to. Unfortunately, are we in the phase of grief where we are rooting for loss?
It's hard to get. I don't know. I'm very mixed. Like, you never want to see your team lose,
Right.
but at the same time, you think a change needs to be made. And
Yeah.
so,
But would you make a change even if you did lose? And so then at that point, like if you wouldn't, do you want a terrible record and you're keeping your coach regardless?
I feel like we're at a point right now, and UF fans might have gotten here too. Like, again, you want to win every game, but once the season's lost and over, like wins against a Virginia Tech team that got blown out by Old Dominion and don't have a coach, like how much does that really mean?
Yeah.
The NC State game this weekend, they just lost by 40 to Miami, last week. So like, do you feel great about that? Now, the Florida game's a little bit different. I feel like both fan bases will really want to win that just because of what it means. And like the Clemson game, like if you could have gone up to Clemson, you've beat them one time in the last 10 years, like that would have been one that I think people would have been excited about. But, you think about their wins here recently, a win against Wake Forest, like that's never going to excite anybody. A win against a Virginia Tech team that has quit and doesn't have a coach. Like, you're glad that they didn't go out and get embarrassed, and so that's great. But ultimately, you look at the program and the situation and you just kind of think, well, what's best for the program long term? Is a win in this game best for the program long term? I still think if they were to lose the next two, he would absolutely be gone. I don't think they would bring him back at 5-7. I think 6-6 is a bit of a question mark at this point. And 7-5, I would lean towards, 60-40. Yes, they do bring him. So I think it's more likely if they do win these last two games. I think NC State might determine it, but I guess it also depends on what Florida shows up. The Florida that Kentucky boat races or the Florida that almost takes down a top 10 Ole Miss or a top 10 Georgia. So I don't know. Maybe Tennessee will be the game they play really poorly against, and then they'll play really well against Florida State since they seem to be alternating now. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to
play really well. I just think they have to play better than they played against Kentucky. Like that, I don't know if they need to play as well as they played against Ole Miss to beat Florida State. I just think they can't. They have to show up.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what it is. They're talented. So if they show up, they will play that well. But if their quarterback throws 3 picks in the first half, then they'll probably lose like both the games that are left, So I don't know. I don't know that I'm fully to the point of like, I'm driving to Raleigh on Thursday, like I'm going to the game. So it's like, I'm not actively cheering for losses, but also understand that like, I don't know that I'm real thrilled about keeping him either. So I don't know. It's a tough situation to be in. And when you get to a point where like losses do not impact you, like I went to the Clemson game and it was over and I was like, all right, so how long is this ride back? Like I didn't even care. I was like, whatever. So it's a bad place to be in.
Well, we had an interesting weekend because Florida was in it with Ole Miss for 3 quarters. I mean, I guess technically they were in it for 4 quarters, but when you've gone that long stretch without scoring, we start to see like the writing on the wall or whatnot. Florida lost, and there are no such thing as moral victories. But I will say I'm continued to be impressed when this team has the ability to show up and have some heart, because I understand they're not in a great situation. And it does make the Kentucky game even more puzzling though, and probably even more frustrating, because I think Tennessee and Florida State are both far more winnable than Ole Miss. And had they picked up that Kentucky one, they could be bowl eligible. But now at this point, they could win them both, and they're still home in December.
Yeah, so I mean, being at that game, the Ole Miss game, like when it was 10-0, like pretty much we had mailed it in. Mm-hmm. Everybody in that section was kind of done. So I was actually really impressed with Florida, because I said all the previews, like if Florida doesn't come out strong and start really strong, I was worried they were going to quit. And then that didn't happen, but then they still fought.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of energy among the Florida fans who were there. And I'll give Ole Miss fans credit for as many as they can fit in that stadium of theirs. They were decently energetic. The turning the lights off, though, that was pretty weak. We all got pretty upset at everybody when the lights went off on 2nd and goal. But
do you think it was purposeful, or do you think that was just like an accident?
they have control over the lights.
Well,
I think
they
that
have control over them, but like, did somebody hit the wrong button, or did something short circuit, or were they legitimately petty enough to turn the lights off?
I'm pretty convinced that happened deliberately, but they turned them back on, so I guess who cares? But yeah, I mean, that was an awesome game. I thought that on that 4th and 9 Hail Mary, we were going to get a prayer at Jordan Harris situation, where Mercertimet's able to catch that ball off the deflection. But it was definitely, I mean, everyone there wanted it really bad.
Yeah.
Especially the Florida fans did. My voice only came back just about half an hour ago. It was a pretty good environment. Oxford was great to be at, but just football wise for Florida, that was definitely, I mean, that was a massive game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just being a 3-6 team who was a top 10 team, it was somehow a bigger game for Ole Miss fans, but competitively, it was really good. I mean, you saw Florida's defense play very well. Jaden Woods getting a pick was not on my bingo card, but that was pretty fun to watch. And the offense, the deep shots were there, at least in the first half. That's not something that you've seen from Florida in a while, was being able to go deep consistently. And, they did it 2 or 3 times to score some points. So it was a pretty encouraging game. Obviously, they're getting blanked in the second half. That's just the coaching, mismatch that we had in that game showing. But it was a decent effort from Florida, which obviously doesn't mean a whole lot because they lost the game at the end.
I was so intrigued by Aaron Childs as a lead blocker, and it was giving me shades of Billy Latsko from my husband's team in 06. I just thought that was a really cool wrinkle that Florida incorporated. But I did, and if this team was auditioning for their next coach, which, I don't know, maybe they were, I think they did well for themselves. There was a good showing. I think the freshman players, younger players, maybe not just freshmen, but really showed out. So impressed with Miles Graham, who just continues to be an absolute dog on this defense. But so many young guys showed the ability to give us flashes of what we know they're capable of. So I don't know, maybe it was an audition for the guy on the sidelines.
Some drama in that.
Yeah.
We got through Sunday, and shockingly, Lane Kiffin is still in Oxford.
He is. He's still at Oxford. And, I think from the Florida fan perspective and the things that we hear behind the scenes, which you guys hear the same stuff that I do, I still think there's a lot of confidence that Kiffin ends up in Gainesville. And I think that the information about Sunday wasn't coming from the UF side. I think it was coming from sources, contacts on the other side. I'll say it like that. And I think that it was linked to the thought that Ole Miss may force his hand, which would have been the only thing that made Sunday make sense, was that if they said, hey, listen, we need you to give us an answer one way or the other. And then once he gave his answer, Ole Miss saying like, okay, well, if you're not going to coach us next season, then you don't need to coach us the rest of this season either. And I don't know that I think it would have been smart for Ole Miss to give an ultimatum with regular season games left to go, but I could see where they would be over it. And, this is the part where I do feel for Ole Miss fans. I do think that there is some, I don't know. If he stays, it's not because he thinks they're equal programs. It's because he loves where he's at, loves the people around him, loves his players, loves Oxford. And that's okay. That's an emotional decision. And you can't argue with emotion. But if you were to put the two jobs on paper, I still think there's a gap. I agree that NIL has closed that gap somewhat. And I understand that Ole Miss has given him pretty much complete control. So I think it would be harder to walk away from than it would have been 10 years ago. But I still think one's a better job than the other when you take emotion out of it. But if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I am kind of tired of this at this point. It happened in 2022 with Auburn, and it happens now. And I understand, he said yesterday something about this is just our policy, this is our process. But it's not necessarily a great policy for your fan base, And I think you can get whatever number you want out of Ole Miss. So it's not about making sure I'm squeezing every last dollar before I sign an extension. He may really not know what it is that he wants to do, and he's still thinking about it. But if he's staying, he should go ahead and tell them that, because this stringing along is actually causing some divisiveness within their own fan base.
Yeah. As a Florida State fan, Jimbo did this every year. with LSU, and then eventually left for Texas A&M, and it sucked because Florida State. Jimbo had some complaints about what he had been given, and Florida State didn't have the resources to do everything that Jimbo asked. But they never told him no. I will say that. Like, they always just said, like, we are working on, like, we are trying. Like, Jimbo really wanted the football only facility, and we were nowhere close to that in 2015, 2016. It literally just opened up this year. So a decade later. And so, I think they, will want more money for assistants. He did that every year, but his assistants kind of started to suck, like after the run they went on and they all got poached. And so, yeah, it sucks as a fan because, like, you're invested, and obviously we care about these programs more than any of these coaches. Let's be real. Like, it is a job for them. And so, like, yeah, from a fan perspective, like, the Jimbo thing, and that's why most FSU fans, like, there's revisionist history now. Almost all FSU fans were just ready for him to go when he went. And they were like, dude, we're just tired of it. Like, and it was every offseason that he flirted with LSU. And then obviously he ends up at A&M, which is different than where he's been kind of flirting. But it was so tiring. Like, every single season, it would be like, well, he might leave. And social media was a thing then, but not like, obviously it has just grown and grown and grown over the last decade or so. And so, yeah, I get it. We've been there. I do think, and I don't know that I feel real strongly about this, but I think LSU is being really quiet right now. Like, you're not hearing about other candidates. You're not hearing about, they're doing this.
In this Lane Kiffin sweepstakes, whether they're talking about it publicly. They are.
If I had to guess right now, my gut is that he ends up at Florida, but like, him staying at Ole Miss wouldn't shock me. And there's a little bit of me that thinks he's just going to end up in Baton Rouge, like, completely blindside everybody. And it's almost like this distraction over here of, UF Ole Miss, and then boom, he gets announced at LSU. So I'm not predicting that. I'm still predicting UF. Like, my prediction means anything, but I like, that just wouldn't surprise me at all, because that's typically how it works in these things.
LSU is a bigger player in this than I think the general public realizes, and conversations 1,000% have taken place. To my understanding, numbers have even been thrown around, or and what an NIL budget would look like and things like that. Now, I don't think that he ends up at LSU. I think for sure this LSU job will be used as leverage for either staying at Ole Miss or coming to Florida. I think the stuff that's gone on with the governor of Louisiana probably helps both Florida and LSU in this situation, because that's like a whole nother level of crazy that neither of the other schools have to deal with. But I definitely think that it's an interesting factor in this. And, I'm so interested to see what happens. I do think at some point Ole Miss demands an answer. I think that they're going to, I can't imagine them going into the playoffs without an answer. Now, how that forces his hand, we'll have to see, because if he wants the Florida job bad enough, he may have to say, I'm not going to be Ole Miss's coach in the playoffs. And I do think that's a really hard ask of a coach who this is what he's worked his whole career for, is making it onto the big stage, which is what, making the playoffs would entail. I just don't see a scenario where Ole Miss lets him coach the playoffs knowing he's going to Florida. But I also don't see a scenario where they don't make him give an answer before they go into there. So it's tricky, Will.
Yeah, I think you'll get some clarity here pretty soon, because I tweeted this out yesterday. I think the first domino is going to be James Franklin at Virginia Tech, because Franklin has his eyes on the Florida job, right? He finds it appealing. So if you get a headline in like 48 hours that Franklin is finalizing a deal with Virginia Tech, then you probably know that Florida job is not open. That is getting closed up. So I think that'll be some of those dominoes that you start to see fall maybe early this week. I do think that there'll at least be an answer decided before the Egg Bowl. Whether that's public or not, I don't know. But I do think that there'll be a conclusion drawn, at least behind closed doors, in the next 7 or 8 days. And then we'll probably hear about it after Thanksgiving. So, I mean, there's a lot of time left, obviously, and these things can change like that.
Yeah.
LSU's definitely not out of it. I would be surprised if he does end up there at this point, just given all that we do know. But I think you'll start to see the dominoes fall one way or the other pretty soon. And then we'll have an answer, while we're having our leftovers.
Would you? So if I'm Ole Miss, I would not let him coach the playoff. If he,
I'll be honest, I don't think I understand that.
Okay, so here's my thought: is like I just think it's too much going on with signing day. So it's not necessarily about coaching the playoffs; it's about everything else that's going on around it. But like, you need a coach in place for signing day. You need a coach in place for the portal. You need, and so like, how is he recruiting with split loyalties? Like, who is he recruiting for in December?
Yeah.
Like at those most crucial times. And so it's not necessarily about coaching in the playoffs, but I think you also just have to wonder like he has already like made his decision to go to UF. Can you really, like, as Lane Kiffin or really any human, can you really compartmentalize that much? Like, is he really focused on those actual playoff games too? Now, I don't think Ole Miss is a national championship competitor this season, right? I mean, they're there. And so, yes, if they get a good draw or maybe they get an ACC team first round of the group of 5, yeah, like they could get to the semifinal and then shoot, you get lucky in one game or somebody else has a bad game against you, whatever. Like, yeah, you could do it. But like, nobody really is picking Ole Miss to win it all. And so, I don't know. I think it's those other things. It's not necessarily just about coaching the playoff games, but with signing day, with the portal, with trying to, how does the portal, if he is announced for UF or it's announced that he's taking the job,
he's still coaching in the portal.
How does the portal open for Florida, but it doesn't open for Ole Miss because they haven't announced a new coach? Like, people can it just gets so gray and weird that like, I think if you're Ole Miss, you say like, hey man, we appreciate this. Right. Go ahead and go. Pete Golding will coach the playoffs. Like, I don't know, man. It's a weird spot to be in for sure. Because maybe that's his audition for that. Maybe that's Pete's job or audition for the job. Mm-hmm.
Let's play out these scenarios here. So the first scenario is after the Egg Bowl, he comes out and says, Ole Miss is home. This is where I will be until I retire. And the rumors are put to bed then. Florida moves on to their next coach. Ole Miss goes into the playoffs with 100% confidence that Lane Kiffin is coaching their team in 2026 and beyond. So that's option one. Option two is that he comes out and takes the Florida job. Or the LSU job, but I think Florida job is more likely, but he takes another job. Ole Miss is then in this position where they say, okay, thank you for your service. You're done. And it's Golding. Or 2, they let him coach the playoffs, which seems unlikely. The third scenario is they don't force his hand and he doesn't say anything. But that becomes the absolute worst kept secret as each day passes, because if Florida doesn't make a hire or LSU doesn't make a hire, whoever they're hiring has to still be playing in the playoffs. And what does that do to your team? You know, these questions, these wonderings, do you fully believe this coach? And then whatever dirty is going on behind the scenes in terms of recruits and the portal and everything else just becomes so complicated. So that last scenario seems maybe the most destructive to all parties, but particularly Ole Miss, because if they're making a hire, it's a lot harder for Ole Miss to make a hire at the end of the playoffs than it is for Florida to make a hire or LSU to make a hire. Your top tier programs, TJ, you and I have talked about this off air before. Alabama didn't have a problem stealing DeBoer when Washington was done because it's Alabama. I don't think Florida or LSU would have a huge problem getting somebody that was a playoff team because of who they are. Ole Miss's options are going to get more and more limited. You've got to think Ole Miss, in theory, would be in the Franklin sweepstakes. I don't know that he's their choice A, but if Florida's not open, Florida State's not open, whatever, that might be a more appealing job than Virginia Tech. But the second he commits, he's not flipping ship a month later. So that's gone.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about Florida, like, so, all right, Lane signs an extension tomorrow, right? Theoretically. Who's Florida's next option? Like, who are their next 3 candidates? Like, who in your mind are their next 3 candidates?
Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
I think they say no.
Okay.
I still think Drinkwitz is up there, even though he's not necessarily up there for me. And I think Jed Fish probably, if you had to name the top three, and you could get any of them at any point, right?
Yeah, I think you could pull all those coaches in January. I don't think you.
Right. So it's less detrimental to Florida.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal.
Ole Miss.
And if you're Ole Miss, okay, so same question. Who are Ole Miss's candidates? I mean, Pete Golding's up there.
Probably Summerall is up there, but I mean,
if Auburn doesn't take it, is Auburn a better job than Ole Miss?
Who doesn't look at him? I mean, but you think that's an option? Maybe Golish, even though I think USF's star is kind of dimmed a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Like your options are a little bit more limited, and schools that might get picked up from some of these other dominoes that are going to fall.
And so they might just keep Pete if that's the case.
Yeah,
like if you have to go too far down the
sooner this happens, the more options they have. The longer it drags out, whether because they don't force their hand or he doesn't decide or whatever, the more limited they get. Now, if they were going to go with Pete regardless, then maybe it doesn't matter. And they would rather continue to try and convince Lane and hope that there's some, sentimental something or other that happens the deeper they get in the playoffs. And maybe that's their play. I don't know. But none of these scenarios are perfect for any of these schools.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think Ole Miss's candidate pool is, a tier below Florida's if Lane leaves. But I still think whatever their candidate pool is, outside of people getting picked up, like they would still be able to go out and get them. But I mean, I guess the same is true for Florida. Like you mentioned some of those guys like Lincoln Riley. Like, well, what if LSU says we're tired of waiting on Lane and then he's gone to LSU? Then, it's kind of the same thing. Like I feel like the candidate pool,
it's a different tier, but it's the same concept.
Yeah, they could pick up, if Summerall somehow didn't have a job yet, which I would be surprised by, but like they could go get him from Tulane in whatever time frame.
I mean, I think Ole Miss could steal in January, but the problem is if the guys you're looking at, other programs are looking at stealing, you're not stealing somebody a month into their new job. So that's what the issue is. You could get somebody that's still left at a USF or still left at a Tulane or still left, but the problem is if somebody else has already plucked them from those schools, that's where your pool is getting smaller.
Definitely. I do think we get an answer in 2 weeks. So hopefully this whole conversation where it's like total chaos, you know what's going on, doesn't come to fruition. But it is up there, right? Because, I mean, Ole Miss, like you said, will be less appealing to some of the other coaches if you're going head-to-head with other schools like Florida and LSU are. So I do think it's in the best interest of everybody to get it done in the next 2 weeks. And does that mean for Ole Miss they're going to have their coordinator coach in the playoffs? Yeah, probably, if he does decide to leave. But that's just kind of the reality of where they're at if you're the Rebels.
All right, well, let's talk about some of these other SEC teams. And there's just so much parity, chaos, I don't know, uncertainty right now about how many SEC teams are going to make the playoffs and where these teams are sitting. Let's start with Texas A&M. First of all, watching my kids' soccer game, kind of just scrolling on my phone, thinking South Carolina is just going to wax A&M and then come home and turn it on and Texas A&M wins. Wild turn of events. But I mean, they're undefeated. I personally think they're the best team I've seen with my own eyes this year when they played Florida. And they've got Samford at home, which is a cupcake. And then they go to Austin and they take on Texas, which, I almost think it kind of depends on which Texas team you're going to see. But I like Texas A&M in that. So are they going to run the table in the SEC this year?
I think there's a decent chance now. I mean, if you had asked me 5 weeks ago, I would have said just like by default, nobody can do it.
Right.
Because of what the league is. But I mean, A&M, like in a vacuum, if you had told me that they win a close game against South Carolina, I wouldn't have been overly concerned, right? Because of the depth that we think is in this conference and just how Carolina would have gotten up for this game. The fact that they went down by 27 shows me that this team has the ability to implode, which is a little scary going into the playoff. Because if you do that against a better team, not at home, your season's going to end.
Yeah.
So obviously you get credit for coming back from that spot. The fact that it happened is very concerning, right? Because it wasn't like they just went down by 14 after that scoop and score. It got doubly worse since then. So you have the ability to implode and then come out. I mean, so yeah, you give them credit for the comeback. Their offense looked really, really good. Their defense bounced back. I am a little bit scared of what we saw in that first half for obvious reasons. But in that game against Texas, like in my mind, Texas is eliminated from the playoff. Texas is not going to think that way. They're going to think that with 3 losses, with a win over A&M, they have a plenty good resume to go to still go to the playoff. So it doesn't matter what I believe; it matters what Texas believes. So they're going to be fighting their asses off to go win that game. So it's a very difficult game. It's a rivalry, through and through. So we'll see what happens. It'll be a really hard game, but A&M's definitely good. I would say they're a lock to be a top 4 and get a bye at this point. But we'll see how it plays out.
TJ, what do you think? What when you were watching on Saturday, were you thinking like this team is imploding? Like, were you shocked at the comeback? And is this one of those things we're going to be like, well, hey, look, they got battle tested and they got better and they are going to use this going forward? Or is this, kind of a chink in the armor?
Yeah, I mean, I think both sides. Like, I don't know that I really believed. I mean, maybe it's just because I have too much faith in Ohio State. I don't know that I really believed that Texas A&M was really going to get and go and win a national championship. Like, I don't know that I had bought into that fully. I thought they had done a really good job of finding ways to win games in different, styles of play, close games, high scoring, defensive kind of dragouts, whatever.
Yeah.
Going into this weekend, and we'll talk about Alabama and Oklahoma in a minute, but going into this weekend, Alabama still had like overwhelming odds to win the SEC when it looked like it was going to be A&M and Bama in the SEC championship, which, we'll see how the last 2 weeks shake out to see if that changes at all. Well, this weekend won't have much of an impact, the FCS weekend that we have coming up, but which we could probably have done a segment on that just so that I could have some fun. But so I don't know. And Bama was still going to be favored by them a ton. I just think that sometimes it is hard to get up every single week. And so I do think they deserve a lot of credit for coming back and not just hanging their heads. They could have easily just said like, hey, this isn't our week. We go beat Texas. We're 11-1. We're still in great shape. We're still going to Atlanta. Like, who cares? You do get some credit for that. You also get some, hey, man, what are we doing? I mean, this is South Carolina. This wasn't like an Oklahoma team that's playing really well right now or a Florida team that has just a ton of talent. You were at home against a team that is terrible.
Yeah.
And just mistake after mistake. Marcel didn't look good. Letting Sellers is a freak. But man, I think it's both. I think it's both sides. And my thoughts on A&M, I don't know if they've really changed a ton. I don't know, man. Did you see that graphic that they threw up on the screen? I took about 1 million pictures this weekend, so I don't even know if I'll be able to find it. But
their conference winners?
Yeah, like who they played.
No, I didn't see this graphic.
Yeah, I would throw it up on the screen, but I just can't get it there fast enough. Their wins are against Arkansas, last in the SEC, South Carolina this weekend, second to last in the SEC, Auburn, third to last in the SEC, Mississippi State, fourth to last in the SEC, Florida, sixth to last, LSU, seventh, Missouri, eighth to last. Like, they haven't played one team that is ranked on the right side of the hemisphere, right? Like, every team they've played. They didn't play Alabama. They haven't played Georgia. They haven't played Ole Miss. They haven't played Vandy, Oklahoma, or Tennessee. All of the teams with winning records in the conference. They do play Texas next week. So I hadn't realized that going into it. And when they were struggling, I was like, maybe this makes a little sense. Maybe they're not quite as good as we think because everybody they've beaten sucks.
I'm telling you, they looked better to the eye test than Georgia or Alabama. Georgia or Ole Miss when we played them.
Yeah, but I mean, Florida sucks too. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like Florida's very up and down. Like, how did, and even in that game, it was close for a half against a Florida team that like Miami and LSU had just dominated.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Like, I guess Florida was coming off that Texas win, which we'll get to Texas in a minute, but like, I don't know, man. Like, just
to A&M's credit, they are the reason that all those schools have another loss on their conference.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
That's fair.
But I mean, like some of them that we just mentioned, like Mississippi State and Arkansas, like you're talking about a couple of programs without a coach, a program,
created, they had Texas, LSU, and Florida on it. Now, it's not Texas A&M's fault that LSU and Florida were absolute garbage this year. That's not what was predicted going into the season. There were people that predicted LSU was going to win a national championship. There were odds for Florida's quarterback to be in New York. Florida was a talked about potential playoff team going into this season. So, I mean, it didn't play out that way, but when you looked at this A&M schedule going in, they had Notre Dame, they had, just all the teams that I just mentioned. I mean, they had a schedule. Nobody else showed up.
Yeah. And they did beat Notre Dame. Like, they've done some good things. Like, I'm not trying to say that Texas A&M is just trash, but I do think that graphic was somewhat revealing. Even the LSU game you mentioned, like, yeah, it was all on the schedule. I mean, LSU quit in that game. Like, they knew where Brian Kelly was going. Like, that game specifically, they played Auburn a little closer than they probably should have. I don't know. Like, are they – okay, here's a good one. Is A&M right now how would you power rank, Will, the SEC?
A&M
first still?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I'd jump Georgia up to first after this weekend. I don't know if that's crazy, but I'd have A&M.
I would go A&M, Georgia, Bama. I'd give Georgia over Bama now.
I might put Oklahoma ahead of Bama.
I wouldn't, because that game was so fluky. I picked Oklahoma, but I mean, Bama
that's just how they win every game.
Dominated them in every.
They did. Oh, but so did Tennessee 2 weeks ago, and Oklahoma just finds a way. Man, they're ridiculous. Yeah. But
championship teams just find a way. That's kind of a I don't know.
It's the Mateer magic that Will loves.
Mateer magic. I think. I mean, I don't think you can put the only undefeated SEC team anywhere but one. And maybe that changes, but I do think head to head that Georgia would beat A&M.
Well, that's more of like what a power rating is. So like not a ranking, but like power rating, I would take Georgia.
On Kirby Smart. I
take Georgia and Bama over them right now. And I think Oklahoma might be a question. Like, who would you take on a new? No, I'll agree with. I'll keep A&M at third.
I think I'd lay 4.5 with A&M over Oklahoma on neutral side.
I think it just depends on which version of both teams you get. But I would agree with you. I'll take A&M over Oklahoma.
Definitely interesting. I definitely got that game in Austin circled, the last regular season game of the year, because I think it's going to be an interesting battle. But A&M could drop 2 and they're still in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. A 10-2. And they're not losing to Samford. So if anything, an 11-1 team is going. But so right now they're in the SEC championship. If Texas beats them, is there any scenario where Texas A&M doesn't go to the conference title game?
Yeah, if they lose to no. If they lose to Texas, would Georgia not get the tiebreaker over them for a common opponent?
They would, but then what do you do with A&M versus Bama?
Yeah.
Oh,
this goes.
I don't know how that tiebreaker would work. I need to do more research on
that. We got a comment saying, "Stop hating. My dogs are the best team in the SEC." By the listen, I love Georgia. I say all the time that Kirby
I'm clipping
Smart
that.
Is my favorite current college football coach in terms of abilities to make adjustments, in terms of the fact that he will step on your throat. If you were on fire, he wouldn't pee on you. All the hallmarks of being a great SEC coach, Kirby Smart has. So I'm definitely not. I'm just saying it's hard to put a team with a loss over a team that is currently undefeated, even if I would pick Georgia in a head-to-head match.
It was hard for the committee a couple of years ago. All right, we got to move on. We're running out of time. What's next?
Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about that Bama team. Okay, so they lost to Florida State at the beginning of the year. They lost to Oklahoma this past weekend. They're sitting at 10-2. They got Eastern Illinois at home. That should be an easy one. But then they got to go to the Plains and play Auburn, which on paper shouldn't be a problem for them, but it's their biggest rival. It's on the Plains. Fluky things happen for this team there. So are they in trouble?
I mean, this is a total nightmare if you're a Bama fan, to know that you now have to go win in Jordan Hare to keep your playoff hopes alive after what it seemed, after the spot that you were in after the LSU game. I mean, that game on Saturday, like I said, Bama absolutely dominated Oklahoma the entire game. They had over how many more yards? They had almost 200 more total yards. They had 11 more first downs. They threw the ball for almost 200 more yards. And then they just turned the ball over 3 times. And one of those was an 85-yard pick six. So, I mean, I picked Oklahoma. I want to give them credit for winning the game. But Bama really just, I mean, they dominated that game. They just didn't get it done, which obviously is not what a championship team would do. So, I think Bama, to a certain degree, is in a bit, I mean, I won't say they're in trouble, but they're definitely, their margin for error is totally gone. Yeah. And you know that Auburn's going to get up and be like, we can ruin these guys this season. Like, they're going to get everything they can out of that game, obviously. So, I mean, yeah, I think Alabama was really, really good, but we saw on Saturday they can play really good and still lose games, which is kind of the story of this whole conference. So we'll see how it goes. But Bama's definitely on thin ice now.
I also think we're coming for a pretty big log jam just in general of like 10-2 teams here at the end. And what do you do? Like we all kind of look at this and say like, oh, well, Bama's in. If they win, I think tomorrow night's rankings are going to mean a lot. And, you know, we've talked about this, but like what happens if Michigan finishes this thing 10-2 with a win over? Like what happens when you have the log jam of, you know, USC 10-2, Oregon 10-2, Bama 10-2, Vandy 10-2, Michigan 10-2 with a win over the number 10 or the number 1 team in the country. What happens if Texas Tech loses to BYU, but is like ranked 5th? Are they dropping 7 spots out? Like, does the Big 12 come and steal an extra spot? What happens if Miami gets to 10-2? Like, what do you do when there are like 9 10-2 teams here? I mean, I know that we all kind of assume, well, Bama's logo is Bama's logo, and they'll just put them in. And they're in the SEC, so they'll just put them in. I don't know that that's like for sure the case when Michigan might be the number 1 team, or when Notre Dame's logo is in there, or when a lot. So I don't know, man. I think it, and that loss to Oklahoma, like obviously if it came down to it and those were the 2 teams, Oklahoma will get in over them because of the head-to-head. And so, yeah, I think we are, you know, I still would have Bama in. I think as long as they win in Jordan-Hare, they'll be fine. But I mean, they definitely opened themselves up for like it not being a sure thing right now. I would say they're in at 10-2, but I think there is way too many variables. Like I said, BYU somehow wins the Big 12, or Michigan gets to 10-2, or USC could still get to 10-2, right? Like, I think there's a lot here that you kind of look at and say, all right, I'm not really confident, or like they're not rubber stamped in the playoff right now, you know, like some other teams, like Ole Miss or A&M or others are.
I think we're going to see some chaos, guys, which, like, you know, when my team's out of it, that's fully what I'm rooting for. Bring on all of the drama and chaos. But yeah, it is really interesting. And we talked this offseason about how we thought this Florida schedule was so tough that a 9-3 Florida team was going to potentially make the playoffs. I don't think we ever discussed a scenario where there could have been 6 or 7 SEC teams sitting at 10-2, though, or, you know, until just the last couple of weeks. And I it's wild to think about a scenario where a 10-2 Alabama is sitting out, but I do think that loss against Florida State is going to hurt them. TJ, you mentioned, you know, that this week's playoffs are going to mean playoff rankings are going to mean a lot. And I'm unconvinced of that yet, because I feel like the final rankings, they always just do whatever the hell they want. And they're somewhat unrelated to every single rankings that they did any week beforehand. So I have like some PTSD and trust.
Oh, you have PTSD from that.
I mean,
you have PTSD from that. Although Allie and I did spend hours and hours on the phone after that happened.
Oh my gosh.
Grief counseling.
I also took great joy in it. I will be completely honest, but I have zero faith that one is related to the other. So we will see, but they did leave out a 9-3 Bama team before and got a lot of grief from it. So will they then again leave out this time a 10-2 Bama team, and what kind of grief befalls them if that decision is made? I don't know. Well, you guys want to discuss that Oklahoma team? I feel like that should be next on our docket. That was a little bit of a surprising outcome, the Mateer Magic that Will loves so much. Oklahoma has Missouri and LSU both at home left. Now, they lost to Texas in the Red River shootout. I don't think we're allowed to call it that anymore, but we don't care on this show. Yep. Red River shootout, lost to them, which, given how the rest of the season played out, I guess is maybe a little head scratching. Particularly that was the week after Texas had lost to Florida. Missouri and LSU, I mean, LSU, I guess, even more so than Missouri, but they're both capable of pulling something off, even if it's not likely. But I mean, is there a scenario where LSU goes to Oklahoma and just surprises all of us?
I think there is. I mean, you saw how they rallied around Frank Wilson this past week. Like, they only beat Arkansas by 1, but that team was actually having fun. Like, you saw a fun post-game locker room video, I think for the first time since Brian Kelly's been there.
Yeah.
Like, it's a totally different attitude with LSU. So I think, I mean, that team is good enough. Michael Van Buren looked good at quarterback. Like, and same thing with Missouri. Bo Prabula might play for Missouri. And if that happens, I mean, Zollers, he looked good against Vandy. He has not been able to throw the ball forward since then. And Ahmad Hardy's great, but if you get Prabula back, all of a sudden, maybe you get a semblance of a passing game. I mean, you're right, Alec. Both these teams are absolutely capable of going to beat Oklahoma. And there's always that world where, I mean, you just want back-to-back road games against ranked teams to keep your playoff hopes alive. Is there a bit of a letdown? Like we saw with A&M against Carolina, there was a letdown in the first half. Is there a letdown mainly this week against Missouri? I think it's possible. I'll be cheering for Oklahoma because of how much stake I've put in them emotionally now, but it is going to be close.
TJ, does it even matter? So, a 10-2 Oklahoma team is going just as much as a 10-1 Oklahoma team or 11-1 Oklahoma team, I mean, is going. So does it change anything if they drop one to LSU?
I mean, I think with the logjam that we just mentioned, that's very possible coming up. I would be surprised if they could get it at 9-3. If they had like Georgia or something on the schedule and took a loss to UGA, then I think it'd be possible. But I don't think they'll get credit for either one of these next 2 losses. Like, these are not good loss. Neither one of them is like a good loss with where Missouri is right now with the backup quarterback and where LSU is, just the dumpster fire that they are. So. Yeah, I don't think 9-3 can get them in. I honestly think they would have a better chance if they'd have lost to Bama by 3 and then won their last 2 games, because you almost somehow get credit for good losses more than you do good wins, which is, just the asinine part of our sport at this moment. But I think they need to win these last 2 because, again, they're ahead of Bama right now. Like if Bama and them were fighting for the last spot, but if they lose again, then they'll jump behind Bama and they might jump behind Vandy and they might jump behind, the USC team that's coming. So like
even with the head-to-head at Bama, if they're looking at a 10-2 Oklahoma team and a 10-2 Bama
team. Oklahoma would be 9-3 at that point. They have 2 losses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're ahead right now because of the head-to-head.
Okay.
But they'll fall behind, and they'll fall. Like, I expect them to be ahead of Notre Dame when the rankings come out this week. They'll fall back behind Notre Dame. Like, they're going to fall behind too many teams if they lose another one. I mean, shoot, at that point, I'm not convinced. I mean, BYU is what probably going to finish 11-1 and go to the conference championship. I think they might fall behind BYU at 9-3. I mean, no, I think they definitely will. Now, BYU losing in the conference championship again, like, might fall behind them, but like, I think they'll be behind BYU at 9-3.
Yeah. I was forgetting about the Oklahoma loss to Ole Miss, by the way.
Yeah. How could you forget anything to do with Lane Kiffin? But yeah, I mean, they're in right now, and they should win these next 2 games.
Solid, and they did.
Like, just really quickly, like, is there any concern around the Missouri game?
I mean, if Ahmad Hardy runs for 300 again, I don't know what the line is, if there is an opening line. I wouldn't necessarily, it's 9.5 right now. If Prabula comes back and plays, there's a little concern. I don't think this is like an upset pick spot, but Missouri can probably compete. I would not say I'm concerned about an upset, though.
Well, we got a couple more teams to get into. Georgia is, they lost to Alabama, which that is still somewhat of a head-scratching game to me. And it feels very much like there's just some Alabama demons that just Georgia can't shake. They're the only ones that they can't, completely dominate all the time. But Georgia gets Charlotte at home, and then they head to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech, who, really could give them a game. I think Georgia Tech is a pretty good team, and rivalry weekend does silly things to very good football teams. This Alabama team to me is just so gritty. And
wait, we're going Georgia or Bama?
We're going Georgia.
You just said Bama.
Oh, sorry. This Georgia team is very gritty to me. I think they take on the personality of their head coach. I think they win. I mean, I think about the Florida-Georgia game, and Florida was very much in that game. Georgia just figures out a way to out-physical you, and they just figure it out. They find a way to win. So I would think that they beat this Georgia Tech team. Then they go to the SEC championship game, correct? Now that Alabama has lost this.
Well, no, because Alabama has the tiebreaker.
But Bama has now dropped more though. So
no, out of conference doesn't matter.
Georgia makes it if Auburn beats Bama.
Conference. Okay.
Georgia makes it.
I know
you
guys like to memory hold that week one. But it did happen.
Week one. You're right. It did happen. Okay. Well, I knew it happened. I just was picturing it. I wasn't picturing out of conference. But okay, so Georgia. So who is our SEC championship weekend game at the moment?
It's
Bama
and A&M. Yeah.
Where's the scenarios where that, and so the only scenarios where that changes is if Auburn beats Alabama.
If Texas beats Texas A&M, can Georgia slide in?
Yes.
Yeah. So the last weekend will determine it. If Texas beats A&M, then Georgia goes. If Auburn beats
Alabama,
then Alabama doesn't go.
Does Georgia, and then Georgia does go, even though the head-to-head. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was picturing with the two losses, but I was forgetting Florida State.
You're welcome.
Florida State, you're welcome. So I don't know. Interesting. I almost think you're in a better position for a playoff run when you don't go to the SEC championship game, which I really hate because I am a huge conference championship weekend fan. But do you want to go bust heads against Texas A&M when you could give your body a week off to prepare?
Listen, I know this is going to upset Allie, but I don't think these conference championships mean very much anymore. I think they still mean something. And I think certainly in the Big Ten and the SEC, they mean more than they do in the other conferences, especially because in the other conferences, I know that last year was our only data point on this, but man, I think there's a real chance that like you go lose, if you're in now, like the ACC, both those teams are playing their way in. Like they're ranked so low that they need it. But like in the Big 12, if BYU goes into that Big 12 championship game ranked 10th, basically the SMU scenario from last year, BYU goes into that Big 12 championship game ranked 10th, they should opt out.
Yeah.
Like they should not play it. They should say, oh, there's an illness or something. We don't have enough scholars. They should just lie and say, nope, we're 10th. We're in. Like they should not go risk it. And I know that's not the scenario this year, but I mean, shoot, could be for Bama. What if Bama's ranked 10th going into this final one and has to go play somebody else? And I know they wouldn't because it's Alabama and the SEC means something, all this stuff, but they should opt out because Bama is capable of winning a national championship. And so should they go play that thing? And I think you're eventually, as soon as you do have, I think once you have a team go to qualify for a conference championship, and then because they got an out of conference loss or two, that conference championship game that they qualified for by being better than everyone else in their conference, once that costs them a playoff team, I think will change the way
that they
do.
can't cost it a playoff spot. Isn't that like
Say what?
Isn't that one of the unwritten rules we talk about though? Is that how you do a championship weekend isn't going to cost you? It's not.
But I'm telling you, the first time it does, I think you're going to see these conferences change up their and we will go to 16 teams and we will have more auto bids. And so I think by qualifying for a conference championship, you get an automatic spot in. You cannot have this costing you a trip to the dance. Like that's asinine.
I hate that.
There's really zero incentive to want to go play in this game if you're Georgia or Bama, because for the loss, obviously, but also, why would you play a game against Texas A&M and Mike Elko when you could be on your couch? Yeah. And then not deal with, the curse of that bye week that we saw last year in the playoffs where all four teams lost. Like you can just kind of get right back to it with sort of a built-in bye during conference championship week. So A&M seems like they're going to go probably unless they lose to Texas, I guess. But there's really not incentive to go play in Atlanta for anybody this year.
Yeah. I love that it comes down to the last weekend. I love that there's going to be chaos. I'm so interested to see, the number that we get in. Texas has 3, so we're guessing even if they win out that they are eliminated from this. They lost to Florida inexplicably. They lost to Georgia. They lost to Ohio State at the beginning of the season, which obviously doesn't affect conference championship weekend, but does, of course, affect the playoffs. 2 of those losses are very good losses. 1, not so much. But before we get out of here, is there any scenario where Texas gets in?
There probably is. I mean, you would need
inordinate amounts of chaos.
Yeah, you need Notre Dame to drop one.
Which is very unlikely.
You would need BYU to lose this game to Cincinnati. They'll be in over I think, did we talk about it last week? I think that a 3-loss Texas goes over 2-loss Vandy. Probably.
I don't think it helps Texas that game was such a blowout.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they probably, just in case, you probably would want to root for Tennessee. You need Oklahoma to drop one of these last 2. Bama losing to Auburn would probably be good for them. You need Ohio State to take care of Michigan.
They need a lot. They need Miami to lose this game to Pitt. They need Georgia Tech to do something bad.
I think Miami at 10-2 might get in over 9-3 Texas.
Yeah.
Because of the win against Notre Dame, who would be in the playoffs. So I don't think it's a short, and the head-to-head. Listen, I hate Miami. So I would rather Bama get in, but I think it's pretty interesting that like Bama and Miami have a common opponent and what that common opponent looks like against them in the same, like early in the year. It's not like Miami just played FSU, who is struggling. Like a 10-2, I think there's, I don't know. I think there's a lot of arguments. So yeah.
And Miami, Texas,
said, like
it goes
for Texas, for Texas, I think you need a lot of crap to go your way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, this was fun. We get to do it again next week because this is all going to come down to the very last weekend in 2 weeks. I'm interested to see how this plays out. Will, tell everybody where they can find you on social media to argue with you, where they can follow your work, where they can follow along in this whole coaching saga.
Yeah, I'm at W Thomas Sports on Twitter, and then Tailgate Talk SEC on YouTube, podcast, and everywhere else.
All right. You can see TJ down at the bottom, TJ_Pittinger. Tell everybody where they can listen to your college football inaccurate takes.
The people actually like that for some reason. I don't know. I just make stuff up and they keep rolling with it. But not unlike the UF folks this weekend. College Football Addiction on YouTube. Go check it out.
All right, guys. We appreciate you. We will see you again, same time, same place next week.